Larissa, Tom Hitchcock here. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. It's pretty wild weather this that we're having today, so it's good to be indoors and uh yeah.
So wild weather for Friday. You're based in Perth.
Yeah, based in Perth in WA. So we had some beautiful weather at the start of the week, and then Thursday, Friday, or even Wednesday, it's just been these torrential rains that have just been coming through. So um we don't really like the rain in Perth. We quite like it just being really dry and beautiful weather. So when it does start raining, yeah, it does impact us quite a lot.
It's interesting. We've got a lot of viewers here listening to these interviews, if you like, in the UK. And one of these people is a good friend of mine, a guy called Kenny. So I'll make sure he listens to this one.
Yeah.
And he's coming over from Scotland, from Glasgow, and he's going to see a girl, believe it or not, in Perth.
Yeah.
And he said to me, in his Scottish accent, he goes, "Tom, is there any chance I could stay with you whilst I'm over? I'd be lovely to see you." Mate, I'm in Sydney. He goes, "Yeah, how far away is it?" I said, "Mate, you can travel across Europe and still not reach
Yeah.
the equivalent."
Yeah.
Of,
I think that's a lot, like for people who come to like WA or they want to explore WA, they think that everything's really close by because on the map it looks like it's really close by, but you know, we actually do have quite like some distance to travel, like especially if you're going from the inner city through to like the Margaret River region. That's like a 4-hour drive. Geraldton's like 5 hours if you're trying to head up north. And so, yeah, sometimes when we do hear like people who are either coming from the eastern states and they're trying to, navigate and say, "Oh, I just want to go to like Mandurah for the day." And it's like, yeah, great, go to Mandurah. It's still like, an hour's drive there and back. So just factor that in. Plus there's traffic because we've really only got one major highway that goes up and down. And so we have a few, bespoke things that are very WA-esque over here. So, yeah.
okay, so one of those, obviously, you've got one motorway. We've got, I believe it's the most remote city in the world. You've got a dislike for rain. You like it dry and sunny. What other things make?
Oh, what other things make WA? We have our quokkas. We're pretty famous for our quokkas over on Rottnest. They're pretty cute. What else makes WA? I think a love of being like outdoors. I think for a lot of WA people, and I can't say for everyone, but I think we really value the space that we have, and I think in COVID that really shone through as well because we weren't cramped on top of each other. We had the capacity to still go out and go for walks in our amazing across our amazing beaches and through some of our amazing parklands and stuff. And so I think for WA, we're pretty fortunate in that sense because, yeah, we had all this amazing weather and we could spend it at home and we could go outside, and I think for us, we primarily, like, our weather's pretty stable. Like, it's not like in Melbourne where one day could be 4 seasons. We pretty much know that, during summer, it's going to start leading up to summer. So it's like a slow build. You might get the occasional weird day, but not very often. And, and so there's like a level of consistency that we sort of really appreciate in WA. Our winters aren't very long either. They're probably only maybe like 2 months. We've only this year probably had maybe 1 month of significant like rain and that's it. So we're pretty lucky with, just like the weather that we get. And we're also known for our amazing beaches. Our beaches are like, you can't see them anywhere else. They're just insane how beautiful they are, like how clean they are, how even when you go to the beach, there's space for everyone. It's not like you're on top of each other trying to fight for space. Like it's just, yeah, it's next level. I think we get a lot of flack for being so far away, but I really feel like we're like a hidden part of Australia that unless like you come here and you spend some time here, you don't really know how great it is until you leave and you go back to like the concrete jungle. So, yeah.
That's very cool, and obviously you've definitely got the weather over Melbourne.
Yeah.
But obviously they probably had the worst deal out of everybody for COVID.
Yeah,
So you've definitely got two big ticks over Melbourne on that one. Sorry,
Yeah.
Melbourne. And no doubt you should be claiming some royalties from the local tourist board as well for the way that we've just explained WA and Perth specifically.
Yeah.
Has it always been home for you?
No, so I'm originally from Melbourne. Like all of my family, like my extended family's in Melbourne. And so when my parents, they decided just before like the big millennium, the Y2K bug was going to, cause mass impact across the community, they actually decided to pick up and just move to Perth. And I'd never heard of Perth before. Like, for me in Melbourne, I didn't even really know that there was that side of Australia. And so we moved across, and no joke, when we first came over here, so that was about, I'll give you an estimate time. It was about like 20 years ago. No, longer than that. It was about 24 years ago. When we first came to Perth, they had still had the rules where like there was limited Sunday trading. And so we come from Melbourne where everything was just open all the time. And so our first Sunday in Perth, sorry, we came into the city, and it was like, the cowboy movies where you have the tumbleweeds like going down like Hay Street Mall. And we're looking around and going, why isn't anything open? It was like 10 o'clock on a Sunday and nothing was opened. And so that was probably the biggest adjustment that we had to get through, was just how things weren't as readily available, One thing that we loved, though, when we first came across was that if we ever got lost, it was really easy to find our way back. You just found your way to the Mitchell Freeway, and there was only one way, either way, north or south, and that was it. So that was great. And yeah, so I think that's probably, the hardest thing for us. Like I remember as a kid coming over to WA and thinking, wow, this is like, there's nothing here and it's so boring. I think now as an adult, I'm like wanting things to slow down because I don't want it to replicate what's going on the East Coast. Like I want it to be that slower pace. So, I'm really hoping that we don't go too fast and try to make everything so like easily available and everything open constantly, because I think it means then that there's less time to just be outdoors and really enjoying like what we have in WA to offer. So yeah.
It's interesting because maybe it's a stage of life thing, because as you said, when you were younger, you thought it was boring, and now you're in a different stage of your life and you actually really appreciate what you would have constituted as boring previously, but you want to protect that,
Oh, you know what? I think it's probably stage of life, but I also think that the way that Perth has evolved, and very much there's more community events that you can go to, and like Scarborough Beach, they've really revamped that lately and making sure that it's available, not just for the whole community. And I think that wasn't really being done, when I was younger. It was sort of sporadically being done every so often. But I think that's probably the biggest thing that's sort of increased, is that there's more things to do for people in their local communities. And so you don't have to travel these massive distances to be able to have a good time just, out of your own house. So yeah, so it's probably a mixture of both.
Okay. All right. Alison, I've been looking at the T-shirt for a while now. It needs an explanation. 12 buckets. The stage is yours.
Yeah. So 12 Buckets, we're a small not-for-profit organisation in WA. So our whole thing is about building really strong communities where young people are seen, heard, and are supported to unearth their spark, because we know that when young people are given opportunities, they can do some really amazing things if they've got the right supports around them. So for us, we start building our community with our young people from primary school, where we run in-school mentoring sessions where young people get connected with a volunteer from the community. They come in, and it's just about that connection. That's the most important part for us, because for a lot of our young people we support, they're going through some big challenges like homelessness, domestic family violence. There's lots of poverty and entrenched disadvantage. And with all the stress that goes on in their family, homes, whatever that looks like, there's not a lot of time for them to just be able to be a kid and to be able to have an hour where they're not having to add on the additional responsibilities of maybe looking after their siblings, or maybe it's helping mum and dad out with whatever it is that they need. But they can just be in there and just be able to explore who they are as a child. And for us, we follow our young people all the way through high school with plans on looking at how do we support them into education. And what we know with our young people is that, you know, they really value the community that we've built around them. And for them, they feel that they can see a pathway for themselves. They're not your, you know, your university kids potentially, or, you know, even your TAFE kids. But what they can see is that if they continue to engage with us, and if they continue to, you know, access the resources that we make available to them with no judgment, they know that they can forge a pathway for themselves. And so for us, we're really excited to see what our young people develop into. These are our future leaders. Who knows? We might have a premier, or you know, a prime minister amongst our midst. You can never discount that. And I think, you know, the stories that our young people tell us about the impact that our program has is what keeps us going. You know, for a lot of them, they say that, you know, at home, they have to be another parent, or, you know, they've got so many responsibilities that really don't sit with them as kids. And so when they come to us, they're able to just be a kid. They're able to focus on themselves and really build a future for themselves. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. And is this something that you set up yourself?
No. So Travis Fitch is our founder, and he set it up through his own experiences of where, you know, he was going through some really big challenges in his own life, and experienced the impact of what mentorship actually had for himself, and really credits that for the positive pathways that he was able to create for himself. So he started it. I came into the organisation in just when the first wave of COVID hit in WA, so it was about 2020. But for me, I've had over 15 years experience in community services. So I've worked in disability, youth, mental health, and the biggest thing when I've been working in these areas is, especially with the adults that I've been working alongside, is that they'll tell me about these experiences that really shape their life, and they all stem from childhood. They stem from a space where, you know, maybe they felt like they weren't seen, or nobody listened to them in those really crucial moments, and they really credit that for being barriers to being able to move forward, to be able to like let go, because there's a lot of unresolved stuff. And so in 2020, I just had my third child, Dimitri, and I was itching to sort of look for that next stage in my career, and did a bit of a checklist that I wanted something closer to home. I wanted something that, rather than being in a large organisation, I wanted to be closer to the ground, closer to the people we were supporting. And 12 Buckets ticked all my boxes. And yeah, I've been with them for, it'll be 5 years next year. And I started as the CEO in December last year. So coming up to my 1 year anniversary.
Fantastic. Listen, I love anything with a social impact. You kind of get a bit more out of yourself when, for want of better terminology, you kind of give a shit about what you do. So it really is. Out of curiosity, have you ever heard of a charity called Be Kinder?
Not Be Kinder, no.
There was Fly High Billy before that. Okay. So we're good friends with that charity. A lady called Danny Mason is the lady that heads it up. She's got quite a horrific story, in all fairness, which is directly associated with her daughter. And what she's all about is very similar, actually. So it's quite preemptive. So prevention is better than cure. And they're just trying to teach kindness in schools. So they've got a whole load of curriculum and things that they do. And they lead into the World Kindness Day as well. It'd probably be a worthy contact for you, I think, because you're trying to achieve similar things and have your own catalyst for change, if you like.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, all right. And what's the future look like for 12 Buckets? What's now you're CEO? You've been doing this for a year. That part of it.
Yeah, I think for us, definitely, like, we are a small charity, and so we do face some, especially at the moment with cost of living crisis and inflation. We do face some challenges in terms of, you know, how do we retain our staff? Because obviously we're not at a space yet where we're offering our staff full-time work, but they're needing full-time work. And so, you know, how do we retain our staff? And so we've been spending the last sort of 4 months looking at ways in which to transform the organization into an agile working model where even though you may be coming in and working directly with the young people, that there are all these tasks and duties that need to be done on the back end as well. And so how can we give you some more hours so that we can try and build you up to full-time hours to not lose anyone that we have, because, you know, our staff are pretty amazing. But definitely for us, you know, it's also about looking at, okay, so how do we grow our program? How do we move it out into other locations? We've got a few areas pinpointed where, you know, we know that there's a really big need for our programs out there. And so how do we continue growing? And more importantly, how do we continue to embed like the voice of our young people throughout our organization? You know, because I think that's the most important thing as well, is, you know, it'll stop you from never understanding what the current needs are or the current challenges are that young people face if you have them, you know, throughout the organization. So there's definitely 2 areas there that we're looking at. So yeah.
How do you feel about those challenges which stop you from growing at the rate you'd like?
I'm a pretty impatient person. Like, I would just love to be able to, you know, have the resources that I need on hand, to be able to have, like, you know, be able to give the staff the hours that they need, to be able to just say, right, next week we're going to open up into this location, let's go. Because I know that the young people in our community, like, if they knew that we were going to head out into their location, you know, the engagement would be there straight away. We're starting to build that name and that reputation for our brand. So it gets a bit frustrating for me, but I'm starting to learn and appreciate being able to slow down. So, you know, being able to acknowledge that I want change to happen faster, but sometimes it's not about me and it's about the bigger picture. And, you know, how do you navigate, you know, that as well? So there's a lot of learning and growing in that for me on a personal level too.
It's interesting. I do resonate with you with the impatience. I don't have any patience at all. It's all long past that attribute of mine. But I think that comes when you've got a passion as well, when you really want to accelerate, you want to make some positive change, then it just compounds the frustration somewhat as well.
Yeah, and I think you run into a bit of a trap where, like, I think early on in my CEO role, I was really focused on, you know, trying to activate all of these opportunities and to really move the organization in a pretty fast-paced way. And I guess what I'm really thankful for and really grateful for is the fact that, you know, my staff were able to alert me, not very directly, but they gave me some hints about the fact, like, slow down, this isn't working for us, and you've got to give us a chance to get to where you are as well. And I think for me, just a few small sort of like experiences like that in interactions, it's made me really recognize that, you know, as one person, yes, you can move into a direction really quickly, but if you want to have that wider systemic change, then it's not about one person, it's about a community. And how do you stop and be able to, you know, be able to move at a pace that the community is sort of moving to, work at that speed. It's like at camp when I, like, in year 6, I remember we went on some camps and it was like, you have to walk at the pace of your slowest person, or, you know, something about making sure that slowest person wasn't left behind. And it's definitely something that's sort of coming to my head over the last couple of months about, all right, it's not so much about me understanding, you know, where the early adapters are and, you know, being able to gauge their comfort, because they're early adapters and they'll get it and they'll jump on board with some of the things that I'm doing. But it's more so about being able to spend more time with those people that need more, like, are walking a bit slower or are, you know, not keeping up to the beat that I'm trying to set. And so how do I then slow my own beat down to include them as part of it? So yeah, it's been an interesting, you know, it's been an interesting couple of months, that space of reflection. And just being able to slow things down, for myself. So yeah.
Yeah, I hear you, and it's good. I've heard that phrase a few times, but I think from my childhood as well, whereas you're as fast as your slowest person. But there is also a case where actually we can help that slowest person pick up the pace somewhat to their, not to their detriment, to their benefit as well,
Yeah.
But we do have limited capabilities, and you're quite right. You have a team around you. You have a legacy component. We have an education component. So we get as many people doing the right thing as possible as you grow. But that will always have limits when it comes to capability. What would be your advice to parents in general? Maybe not even in Australia, for example, that to really make sure that the kids are actually having a childhood.
I think it's about, like as adults and sort of like this is a space that I do reflect on a lot, even for myself. As adults, we sort of get into a point that, like, I think we turn 18 and we're able to vote, and it's legal age for drinking in WA, and so we sort of think that we have to let go of the curiosity and wonder of being a kid. And I don't know where it says that in the rule book, but it's like, as a society, it's almost like you turn 18 and that's it. You've got to just grow up. You have to be able to do everything, and you've got to have all the answers. And, and we start to sort of enter into this world where just setting some really unrealistic expectations, for ourselves. And I think for me, like the biggest lesson, that I've learned, like even with my own kids, is that education, it doesn't just take place in the school. Education takes place in the community, and the best way that people learn, whether you're a child or whether you're an adult, it's when they've got some really safe, stable connections and relationships where they can have those fun times and they can explore and they can really let their minds wander and be curious, and give like the brain a bit of a break from all the stresses of having to compete and keep up with the world that we live in. Because what that does is it sets up for those moments where, when everything falls apart, like when you feel like you're losing control, or where you feel like your direction in life is starting to fade, it's those relationships and people that are most important, and whilst, like I've got a university degree, and but for me, I think, when I look, like, focus on education for my own kids, and so for my kids, they're all neurodivergent, so autism and ADHD, and our school system just isn't set up to support them. And I remember times, like even with my own childhood, so I've also got autism and ADHD, and but I wasn't diagnosed as a kid, and I just found things really hard. Like I persevered and I did it, but it was at a detriment to myself. I sort of became a bit jaded, not jaded, but I sort of had this hesitation of, being a part of the community and having to always meet these expectations and having to always be something that I thought the community wanted, but actually it was nothing that I wanted. And so for me, for my kids, I really, like, I don't bother reading, the school reports. When they got their NAPLAN results this year for year 3 with the national testing, I didn't look at them, because for me, my biggest indicator as to whether my kids are doing really well at school is that they want to go there every day. And so the moment that they turn around and say, actually, I don't want to go to school, that's when I know that their curiosity and that childhood wonder has gone. And so for me as a parent, that's where I need to step in. And I think that's the same as what we try to do at 12 Buckets, is that what we're wanting to do is to give these kids that space where they can reclaim, that ability to be curious and just ask questions, and and just have those moments where they can just let their brain sort of wander and go into all of these different thinking patterns. And when they're able to do that and get some some free, just some encouragement and being able to reaffirm some positive behaviours, all of that stuff comes back into the classroom, because they don't feel so self-conscious about asking questions or being curious. They see it as part of like their natural learning. So Yeah, so I guess for me, it's very much about not so much about being in the classroom, but the connections that people build in places and spaces, because that is what's going to enable learning.
Yeah, and I love all that. So I like to challenge the schools on some methodologies and that, it's and there's certain ways of parenting and teaching that allows the kids to really empower themselves and get to learn themselves and be creative. So
Yeah.
there's something that could be unpacked. A very long conversation, I think.
Oh,
But I
100%, and I think like being able to go at the child's pace and not putting my own expectations, early on in like when my son first got his diagnosis, I was very much about pushing him and trying to get him up to the speed with his peers. But, I had an amazing teacher who just told me, just let it go, like just let him absorb the information and it'll all make sense to him, and so in year one, he's in year 3 now, but in year 1, he refused to read, wouldn't pick up a book. It was just, even me reading to him would just set him off. And at the beginning of this year, he was just in his bed at night and I walked past his room and I could hear him talking. And I thought he was like someone was in his room. So I like poked my head in, there's no one in his room. But what I noticed was that he picked up a book and was reading to himself. And so, yes, he didn't learn to read or he didn't engage in reading with the peers in year 1, but he's in year 3 now and he's reading, and enjoying reading. Like we'll be driving and he'll see signs along the road and he'll start to sound them out because it's that organic learning. There's no pressure around him and he's doing it because he's curious and he wants to understand what the sign says. So, it's just a great example of when we just let people and our kids tell us, the speed at which they want to learn and how they want to do it. It all works out in the end. You just got to get out of the way, essentially.
Exactly, and cultivate the environment where they're comfortable to do things at their own pace. And once they, like with anybody really, we take the first step, our buy-in is far more increased and our interest levels are higher, so the change will happen then.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, listen, we need to draw this to a close now. I've really enjoyed listening to your personal stories attached to what you do day to day. I know there'll be plenty of people wanting to reach out to you. For those people, what would be the best way to make contact with you?
Yeah, definitely. To either look me up on LinkedIn, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to. Personally, if you want to find out a bit more about our organisation, then it's just going to 12buckets.org. And there's lots of information on there as well. And just follow us on the socials.
Love it. Brilliant. Well, listen, thank you very much for your time. I know you're a few hours behind us, but the rest of the Friday's looking pretty good.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Larissa. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Thank you for watching this episode. I hope that you did enjoy it, had lots of takeaways from it. As before, please subscribe below so you can keep on top of any new releases we have. And also, if you would like to have your story told, just reach out with me and I'd love to give you that platform. My best email address is tom@purplepatchconsulting.com. Thank you.